Hey there everyone, Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today we're going to look at a little German band that might be unfamiliar to a lot of you, unless you're a long-time progressive rock lover. This band was pretty active throughout most of the 70s, and then as the story goes, away they went. I'm talking about Triumvirat. 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 Okay. They have 7 studio albums to their credit, okay, released between, what do we got here? 1972, 1972 through to 1980, okay. They apparently were working on a reunion album a few years ago. I don't think that ever saw the light of day, still kind of sitting out there unreleased. Will we at some point? Maybe, we'll see. For the most part, these guys, throughout most of these albums we're going to talk about, were a trio. Many people call these guys a poor man's Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Not hard to figure out why. The band is led by a keyboard player named Jürgen Fritz. He's the mastermind behind this band. He plays, all the usual suspects, electric and acoustic piano, Hammond organ, Moog synthesizer, okay, all sorts of other ARP, string synths, and all sorts of other things. He sounds like Keith Emerson. And the music being a trio, okay, with bass and drums and keyboards and vocals sporadically throughout their albums, just sounds like ELP. Lots of classical leanings, all right, bits of pop. Okay, a lot of it's very symphonic and bombastic, right? The lack of guitar. There is some guitar in spots on some of these albums, but it's very, like I said, very ELP-ish with the kind of the dynamics between the 3 instrumentalists, the vocals, the kind of the classical leanings and all that sort of thing. Some of you, may, if you're a fan of this band, you may think that, their music was on par with ELP. I don't know. We'll talk about that more as we go through here. But I think if you're not familiar with these guys and you like 70s symphonic progressive rock with tons of keyboards, this band definitely is for you. Okay? So let's get started here. So we're going to start with my number 7, which is the only one that I do not own, and there really is no reason to own it. It's 1980's Russian Roulette. This is the last thing they officially released in 1980 to start off the 80s, and just like so many other prog bands who, as the decade of the 70s wore on, just trying to struggle to, where do we fit in the world? I mean, this is a perfect example. This probably, for me, one of the worst falls from grace of any notable 70s prog band. This album kind of makes Love Beach by ELP look like an absolute classic. That's saying a lot. It's a terrible album. Absolutely terrible. There's no prog to be found on here at all. Instead, you got elements of new wave and pop and punk and reggae. I mean, to think that this used to be a very majestic progressive rock band. If you were to listen to this album and listen to any of their first 3 or 4 albums, you'd be very surprised to think that this is the same band. It's basically Fritz, the keyboard player, and another singer that went through a lot of singers in the latter part of the career, and a whole bunch of cast of characters, including like 3 or 4 guys from Toto, strangely enough. This might be one of the worst albums that any of the guys from Toto were ever kind of affiliated with. I don't know, got Lukather and Jeff Porcaro and Mr. Hungate, little bits of bass and guitars and drums and things here and there. But, again, I don't know how much they had to do with this album, but the album is pretty bad. You got Party Life, absolutely dreadful song. You Can't Catch Me is totally forgettable. The rest of the album is just as forgettable as that. Don't bother. So if you're looking to explore this band for the first time, stay far away from that one. Okay, even if you're like a completist. I mean, I'm a completist when it comes to a lot of bands, and most bands, I should say, that I'm into. As you can see, I don't own this one. There's absolutely no reason to. It's terrible. Not too much better is my number 6, all right, which is a la Carte from 1978. Yeah, I mean, This band just went through a lot of lineup changes throughout their career, and especially the latter part of the '70s. It just seems like Jürgen Fritz was just constantly changing bassists and drummers and singers and all that kind of stuff, bringing in all these guest people to do this, that, and the other thing. No different on here. A lot of different guest musicians, a lot of different vocalists. The band at this point is already moving away from their kind of prog beginnings into more of a commercial pop, funk, and rock territory. Some of this album, kind of sounds like Lightweight Player or Pablo Cruz, or even like the more radio-friendly Supertramp or ELO from that time period. If you take it at that level, I guess some of the songs aren't awful. Waterfall, pretty decent song. Oh, I'm Late Again, I like that. The original soundtrack from the movie, pretty good song. Those are not really terrible, but the rest is just kind of bland and just unmemorable, like forgettable, right? It's just, I got it. It's something I just never reach for because it's just, it's not that good. Like I said, it's, if you're thinking Triumvirate of old, not really. Slightly more successful, okay, is 1970. Amazing how we're almost going in order here of when they released these albums. So 1977, Pompeii. Okay, so here it says, New Triumvirate presents Pompeii. All right, so obviously that's Mount Vesuvius on the front there, right? The fall of Pompeii. Mount Vesuvius erupts and just levels Pompeii in a boiling lava pit, right? You know the whole story. This album is a concept album to tell that whole story. More lineup changes in the band, right? So, Fritz just keeps surrounding himself with different people all the time. Also fairly commercial sounding, despite the concept, despite the cover. You're probably thinking, oh, wow, cool, prog rock concept album from 77. Some of it's pretty good. The Earthquake 62 AD starts off the album with plenty of Hammond organ. All right, all over the place from Fritz. Dig that quite a bit. You got Rickenbacker bass. Barry Palmer, who was at the time, the current vocalist in the band. He was the non-German in the band. He was an English vocalist, really good voice. He sounds great on that song. The song kind of sounds like ELP, right? Journey of a Fallen Angel, more of a melodic pop song, but still pretty decent. Viva Pompeii, full of lots of kind of classical elements, lots of bombast, lovely piano. This guy's a killer piano player. As much as I love hearing him on the Hammond organ and the Moog synthesizer, this guy is a great, great pianist. What else you got in here? Time of Your Life, another catchy pop song. Again, half the album is like, just kind of pop music, very melodic pop music. The other half ventures into some of the prog territory. But, Vesuvius 79 AD has its moments. Really great drumming from Kurt Kress on that song, but the rest of, most of the song, again, leans in the pop direction. All in all, it's a pretty mellow album that really lessens up on the prog side of the band in favor of more pop and bits of classical. Not terrible, definitely not great. So far the three that I've talked about, if you're going to look to explore this band, save those for last, if at all, right? Now we're going to get into kind of like the meat of this band, right? So my number 4, I'm going to go to their debut from 1972, Mediterranean Tales Across the Waters, okay? There's the guys in the band, right? A trio at the time. So, really strong debut. Again, if you're a fan of ELP's first couple of albums, I could totally see you being into this. You got the opening 16-plus minute epic Across the Waters. Goes from like keyboard-led bombast to more melodic prog with lots of bluesy piano, organ, and vocals. You got 11 Kids, cool organ-led piece, lots of Hammond organ on that one. Not crazy about the vocals on this album, and quite frankly, I think one of the things about their first couple of albums that brings this band down a notch is that they didn't have a dedicated singer, so either the bass player, whichever one was in the band at the time, or Mr. Fritz would take on the lead vocals. None of them really good singers, and that kind of knocks some of these albums down a little bit for me, and make them not quite as impactful as they probably could have been. But the music is absolutely fantastic. E minor, 5/9 minor 5, sees Mr. Fritz using wah-wah on the organ, which is pretty cool, and then it jumps into this like nimble piano, bass, drum, synth, back and forth, classical rock excursions. Again, you can't, I hate to keep saying it, but you can't not give comparisons to ELP, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, because they kind of went down similar paths here. Whether Triumvirat were copying them or not, but if you like that sort of thing, that kind of like, keyboard trio doing prog and classical rock, I mean, it's pretty good stuff. You got Broken Mirror is another bluesy meets classical romp with lots of piano. Again, the vocals, not great. Instrumentally, though, not a lot of tracks on here, obviously. I got some longer pieces and whatnot. Instrumentally, though, a fine album. A really strong debut with lots of really good instrumental interplay. Amazing keyboards. This guy is top-notch. One of the greats of the decade of the 70s that, never really gets mentioned much. But like I said, I think the vocals just are lacking. And, man, if this was like an all-instrumental album, really good. Or even if they got that Palmer guy, Barry Palmer from later in their career, if he was with them in the beginning, little bit different results there, right? Okay, so my number 3, I'm going to go to Old Loves Die Hard from 1976. So this is the first album with Barry Palmer, the English singer, on vocals. And like I said, I think he helps quite a bit. Although, ironically enough, they bring him into the band, and he, I think, had a background singing like pop music. That's basically what he was. He wasn't a rock singer, per se. They bring him into the band, and the music starts to take on a more vocal and commercial approach. Right? Not surprising. How many times have we seen that, right? I Believe, catchy, memorable song, great vocal harmonies and piano, nice piece, great way to start off the album. Then you got, what else? A Day in the Life is a 3-part suite. It's got lots of really nice piano and moog. All right, quite good. You got The History of Mystery, which is another like 2-part song. So here you got 2 like kind of like nice epics back to back. Really good, nice arrangements. If you like, acrobatic prog with moog and piano all over the place, drums and bass furiously cranking it out underneath. Really good stuff. Panic on Fifth Avenue is a wild, like Hammond organ romp with lots of gymnastic drumming underneath. Really good song. Title track, good emotional vocal by Mr. Palmer. Kind of more of a pop song though, right? All in all, a solid record though. I think you got lots of the early symphonic prog stuff, but you can see already that the band is starting to move into more commercial waters. But a pleasing listen, though. I definitely think this is a fun album, and even though a more of a commercial approach, I actually like this album a little bit better than the debut, which I think the debut is a little bit unfocused, and you got the vocal issue, which is they're kind of weak. But I think this kind of solves that. Still retains lots of the prog, but it's a little bit of an easier listen. The first 2, obviously, I don't think you're going to find too many people who are into this band who would argue that the 2 albums I'm going to talk about next should either be 1 or 2, right? I mean, it's just the way it goes. These are their classics, so to speak. I decided, after going back and forth here, I decided to go with Illusions on a Double Dimple from 1974. This is their second album. Basically, you got 2, if you're going back to vinyl days, you got 2 side-long epics on side A and B of the vinyl. All right, you get the title track on side 1. Brilliant kind of, classical meets progressive rock composition. All sorts of keyboards utilized by Fritz. Really cool song. It moves along very quickly. It's got, there's vocals, lots of long instrumental passages. Again, the vocals done by the guys in the band. This is before Barry Palmer. The vocals are better on this album and the follow-up album than the first album. They are. They're still not the highlights of the album, unfortunately, but that's just kind of the way it goes. Mr. 10% takes up side 2, so each Illusions on a Double Dimple, 23 minutes and change. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts, and Mr. 10% is 21 minutes and change, and that also is 6 parts on side 2 of the vinyl, right? Side 2 has, to me, a little bit more rock and jazz elements, whereas side 1 leans more into the symphonic prog and classical. So you get some different elements going on both of those long tracks of music. You get, of course, you can hear ELP, you can hear little bits of Yes in some of the keyboard sections, but you know what, who cares? It's just really well done. Like I said, I think the vocals too are a little bit better on this album, which makes it a little easier to really enjoy the music as well. And I think it's got a pretty charming little album cover there with the little white mouse. sitting on top of the egg. So for today, anyway, I went with my number one from 1975, Spartacus. There's that mouse once again, right? Now he's instead of sitting on top of the egg, or coming out of the egg, or whatever it is, he's inside the light bulb. So this is based on a lot of what we talked about already. This album is more made up of shorter songs, and there's 9 of them in total. Highly symphonic, loads and loads of Hammond organ and piano and Moog from Jürgen Fritz. But I tell you, the drum work from Hans Bothelt, I think that's how he says his name, amazing, and Helmut Kohlin on bass also does a fine job. This is the kind of classic lineup of the band. These three stayed together for I think 2 albums, right? Maybe it was 3. I'm not sure if they were together also on Old Loves Die Hard. I forget, but those are like. When most people think of the classic lineup of the band, that's what they think of. You got the opening, bombastic, the capital of power, great track. I wish it was longer. It's only like 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Really cool. The School of Instant Pain follows, very melodic song. The Hazy Shades of Dawn, a lot of fun. You got the Deadly Dream of Freedom. A lot of classical bits throughout the whole album, sprinkled here and there and everywhere. So it's definitely, like I said, if you love the ELP formula, that's kind of what you get here as well. All right, not that much different. The songs obviously sound different, and you don't have the exquisite vocals of a Greg Lake. But if you just love that keyboard-dominated sound from this time period, there's a really, really good album. The March of the Eternal City, one of the later tracks on the album, and Spartacus, the closing title track, are both like 8 and change, 7 and change, big epic-style songs. Lots of great symphonic passages. Really, really good. And the musicians just work really, really well together. So that is my favorite of these albums here. So let's recap the list. So Spartacus from 75 is number 1. Illusions on a Double Dimple from 1974, number 2. Number 3, Old Loves Die Hard from 76. Number 4, Mediterranean Tales, Across the Waters, their debut from 72. Coming in at number 4, Pompeii from 77. Coming in at number 5. Number 6, A la Carte from 78. And coming in at last, Russian Roulette from 1980, the one to absolutely avoid if you were looking to get into Triumvirat. But like I said, I think, if you've never listened to these guys at all, just go out and check these 2 out right off the bat. These are the ones that I can easily recommend. There's good stuff sprinkled among some of these other albums, but the 2 that are pretty much top to bottom, really, really strong. Right here, folks. Right here, folks. I mean, that's the thing about the 70s. You had this, you had a huge movement of prog rock bands in, a lot of European countries that, obviously, for those folks here in the U.S., had little to no exposure to other than, we obviously ELP and Yes and Genesis and Rush and Jethro Tull and, a few others are doing, Gentle Giant to an extent, are doing, Renaissance maybe, you had the Rush, doing fairly good business here. But there were tons of other bands, like Trace and Exception, and then you had all the Canterbury bands and all that kind of stuff who, really didn't do much of anything here, and very, very little known here. But actually, for folks who, from throughout the world, who really started to dive into prog rock from this era, discovering all these other bands that were out there releasing albums, some on major labels, some not, on smaller labels, you come across a lot of bands like this that, and you listen to the music of this band, and you can kind of understand why they weren't bigger than they were. Like I said, during their really strong albums, the vocals are not very good. The songs are not, they're not made for the mainstream. And then once they started to adopt more of a commercial sound, bring in a full-time singer, all of a sudden, those songs are less appealing to the crowd that got into them originally. And maybe these new, more commercial songs they're not hit-worthy enough. You know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of just never really worked out for them. But plenty of good stuff on these albums. So check them out. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Stay tuned tonight for Monday Night Must See TV with the Hudson Valley Squares. Tonight, we are each going to take a look at who we feel might be, or what we feel might be, some really cool fantasy supergroups. So each one of us are going to offer up a fantasy supergroup of musicians who are all still with us today, and a fantasy supergroup of those beloved musicians who have left us, okay, who are no longer alive, but we still think about them all the time, and who we kind of hoping are jamming up there, but who we'd love to see in a band together. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So do not miss that this evening, and we'll see you guys all then. So take care. Bye-bye.